Pluck this foam. TrekPak is by far the best organization solution for Pelican cases, other cases, and bags. It's neater than foam and as customizable as Velcro dividers. It's amazing, but it has two pretty big flaws. It's very expensive for what it is, and they don't even make it for all their case sizes. This wouldn't really be an issue if they let you do custom orders, but I've contacted several dealers and Pelican themselves, and they've all just said no. So for my 1626 Air, which I bought specifically because the height let me put my FX6 in it with the handle still attached, I was out of luck. So I took a closer look at TrekPak and realized just how simple it really was. I could make that. A quick Google later, and someone had beaten me to it. Big shout out to Ariel Esterluen and his website for helping me form the basis of this project. The materials I used for this project were some Coroplast or Coreflute board that's usually used in signage, 5mm thick, 3mm thick EVA foam with self-adhesive backing, a cutting tool, a cutting board, a metal ruler, bobby pins, and a drawing square. First off, you need to figure out how much Coreflute and foam you'll need. The way I did it was to just buy out all the stock I could find at 2 stores, because I figured I'd make enough to cover all my current cases and any I get in the future. However, if you want to do this a little bit more economically, you need to measure the interior dimensions of your case, length, width, and height. Don't just use the dimensions stated on the manufacturer's website, because for mine, they're off by a few centimeters in each direction, possibly because they're not counting the curved corners or the slant of the case walls. Once you've got your perimeter, you should lay out all of your gear inside the case in the positions that you want them to be in. Then roughly measure out where you want the TrekPak to go, as if there was a wall between each piece of gear. Since you already know the depth of your case, you can just add it up. Give yourself some excess to play with here. Better to have some left over than the walk of shame back to the store. Once you've got your measurements, you'll need to get your Coroplast or Coreflute. I got mine from an office supply store here in Australia, and you'll need enough EVA foam to cover both sides of it, so just double your area. I'm using 3mm thick because that's the thinnest that has in its self-adhesive type. I did end up running out of the first type and had to use a roll of self-adhesive 3mm foam that I found at Bunnings, and it actually turned out to be much better value. You should definitely get the self-adhesive stuff. It's easy enough to find and will save you a world of hurt rather than messing with spray glue. Remember to measure twice, cut once for any alterations you need to make, and try to make any offcuts as big as possible so you can use them as dividers later. I thought about applying the foam to the Coreflute and then cutting it to size, but ultimately decided that would just make it overly thick and harder to cut through. So instead I cut the Coreflute to size first, then adhered the foam to one side, trimmed the excess, and then repeated it with the other side. I later had to cut through foam on Coreflute anyway, and honestly it was fine. So the order you do things in here is more up to you. If you want, you can do some quick maths and figure out which one will be best and save you the most material. For example, my case is 25 centimeters deep and 71.5 by 35.8 centimeters length and width. So for the perimeter, I needed to find Coreflute at least 25 centimeters tall, because with Coreflute, it's only got the flute or corrugation in one direction, so you'll need that for the connections. I found some that was 500mm by 770mm, so I was able to make 3 sections per board, with each piece being 500mm long. The perimeter I needed to cover was 2146mm, so I needed 4.3 sections of these. I'd definitely recommend doing the perimeter first, because this will bring your edges in and give you a more accurate measurement for the dividers you'll need. My edge pieces kinda sucked once in place because of the earlier mentioned slant of the case's sides, so mine don't rest up against the edges and instead stand up straight. Initially this annoyed me because it isn't super clean and perfect, but it'll actually give a bit more cushion and protection, since the sides will be able to flex a fair bit in case of impact. Also, it'll make dividers easier to make. Once your perimeter is in, put your gear back into the case where you want it. I put them in one piece at a time and used an offcut as a spacer. The rest is just the same thing repeated as you measure the length needed for the divider, cut it, place it in, realize you suck at measuring and then trim off a little bit, and then it fits. When you are trimming, you should try to only trim in the middle of the fluting so that you can still connect them together and it's as easy as possible. Once you've made your first divider, you should also make either a few or several connectors. For these we'll be using bobby pins because my wife just leaves them lying around everywhere anyway, and I might as well. You could try using half paper clips or some form of wire but these are just easier because you don't have to really alter them. I added a piece of gaff tape to the top of each so it'd be easier to remove them, but you don't even have to do that. Just put your divider where you want it, and then slide the bobby pin into the fluting with one arm into each divider, and they should hold pretty solidly. I suggest having a few on hand to keep the dividers in place as you add each new one and measure for the next. So there we go, a full DIY Trek Pack system in my case. I've been using it for about a month so far, and it's held up incredibly well. I'd say you should definitely either do this, or if they make actual Trek Pack for your kit, just buy that, unless the cost is prohibitively expensive for you. All up, I used about 4 pieces of core flute and about 2 rolls of foam, bringing my total cost to about $75 dues, which is about 55 USD. The nearest case in size that has a Trek Pack kit available is the 1650, and the Trek Pack kit for that is going to set you back a whopping 5 times more at 380 Australian dollar dues. That's an insane markup, considering their process would be a lot easier than me doing it myself. Not to mention, I can make more if I want to have several smaller dividers, whereas a common complaint with Trek Pack is that they don't provide enough material to make a lot of dividers. I'm definitely going to just keep making my own. It probably lacks a bit of the real one's polish, but for the price alone it's worth it. I'm using quite a large case, so it'll probably actually be a lot cheaper if you use a much smaller case. Next week we'll be looking at streaming services, so make sure you're subscribed for that. See ya!